Welcome, everyone, to Diamond's webinar series and happy National Disability Employment Month. We are so excited to once again partner with the Helen Keller National Center for today's webinar. For those of you not familiar with Diamond, we are your agency partner that builds accessible experiences. And I'm so excited and honored to introduce the co-founder of Diamond, Joe Devon, who is also the co-founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day and the chair of the GAD Foundation. Please welcome Joe Devon.
Thank you, Natasha, and also happy National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like you all to note that there is a Q&A button down below where you can ask questions, and they will be brought up toward the end of the panel today. Also, Manje Morgan from Amazon had a last-minute conflict and is unable to join us as a panelist this morning. However, we still have an awesome group of panelists. So I will invite each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us what you do. So let us begin with Doug.
Hello, everyone. My name is Doug Rowland. I am a filmmaker, and I have actually had the, mentioning Helen Keller National Center, I've had the honor to collaborate with them on a film called Feeling Through, which was a film where we worked together to cast Robert Tarango, who is an actor who's deafblind, which was significant because it was a film first to have a deafblind actor in a leading role in a film. But more importantly, he did an amazing job as an actor, and it was turned out to be a really great and successful film. We were nominated for an Oscar this year and have gotten to share it all around the world. And ultimately, it's a film about the power of human connection, despite our differences. Yeah, I was very, very honored and pleased to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Doug. Layla, would you like to go next? You're on mute.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us, Joe. My name is Layla Wendy. I go by both. It's my middle name. I work for the California Community Service Program for Helen Keller National Center. So I'm based in California. Helen Keller National Center has two community service groups, one in New York and one in California, but we have services all throughout the US. So I'm very fortunate to have a great team out here that includes mobility, assistive technology, a rehabilitation teacher, and employment specialist, all working together. And I work with placements. So I secure employment for our deafblind individuals for what would be the region above Fresno, all the way almost to the border of Mexico. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Scott.
All right. Well, good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you happen to be. And am I least? I don't know. I guess we'll find out as the webinar continues. My name is Scott Davard, and I am the coordinator of the Technology Research and Innovation Center at HKNC here in New York. My current roles at the center involve working with external companies to improve their technology and accessibility for people who are deafblind. I also do a lot of training here in the center itself with other staff. We'll be starting train the trainer sessions for professionals in the field. And we also publish a lot of reviews and evaluations of those products so that not only can individuals who are deafblind understand and have some information not available in other places with the adaptive technology, but it's also for professionals in the field. The most recent article that I put out was what's new in accessibility in iOS 15 for blind and deafblind users, which is on our blog and also on MacWelt. If you happen to speak German, it was translated to that. So that's a little about what I'm up to.
Thanks, Scott. I speak some Yiddish, which is close, but a little different. So before we begin, I also would like to make this kind of conversational, so don't feel like we're locked into, okay, I ask a question, everybody answers, or, oh, you can't speak just because one particular person might be asked a question. So let's keep that conversational tone. But before we begin, diversity and inclusion have certainly gotten to be pretty big lately, but what I and many others like you folks share with people is that if you don't include people with disabilities, you can't really call yourself diverse and inclusive. And now that we're in the middle of the National Disability Employment Awareness Month, perhaps we can start with some statistics on employment for people with disabilities. So does anybody have some statistics they'd like to share?
I can share some numbers if you like.
Thank you.
You know, this month is very special. It's NADIEM. It's where we celebrate employers and individuals who have collaborated together and are employed. So looking at the numbers, I just gathered some from the Department of Labor. For example, there's 82% of the general population that are employed. Out of that 82%, there is, if you compare that to the community of people with disabilities, 57 of them percent of them are employed. So we see a big discrepancy still, and we would like for it to be equitable, to be at the same level as people who do not have disabilities. So that's what we aim for. Now, if you add the number of individuals who are considered deafblind, who have that combination of vision and hearing loss, then the number is even, it's more staggering. And we're still working on collecting exact numbers for that. So we don't have the numbers, but what I can tell you is that it's a small group of individuals. So it's very easy to get overlooked and to not have employment or locations that are accessible. So I think today's discussion will be nice because we'll be able to talk about how we can create those accessible places. And it just takes a little bit of innovation and desire to do so, to be able to do that. And all in the spirit of NADIEM, of course.
Thank you, Layla. I was also trying to find some statistics before we began, and I couldn't get an exact number, but I did see that turnover is very low for people with disabilities. Could you speak to that and other benefits in hiring? Well, first explain that. If you know the numbers, that'd be great, but I assume you don't. But what other benefits are there in hiring people with disabilities, and just speak to that generally?
Yeah, so HKNC is conducting, we do have a research team that's working on collecting that data. It is a lot of work that's involved. And the reason why it's difficult, it's because it's deaf and blind individuals. Some have disclosed, some have not disclosed necessarily. So being able to capture exact data is very difficult. However, we do have a team of great team of individuals working at HKNC who are working on that. And her name is Megan Conway, and that's exactly what she specializes in. It's just gathering numbers. So on another note, though, the turnover rate for individuals who are deafblind, they're very loyal individuals to a company. And if you were to compare employment of just individuals without disabilities and those with disabilities, you'll find that the retention rate is higher with individuals with disability. It's usually a choice of, this is my career, I'm going to stick to it. So you do find that there's a lot of loyalty and less turnover with individuals that have a disability. And this is just in general, all disabilities. I'm not just quantifying it to individuals with who are deafblind.
This is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. One of the benefits I see, and it really doesn't matter the disability, let's not look at deafblindness for a second. Let's talk about the bigger picture here, and that is disabilities in general. One of the things that people with disabilities, other than loyalty, not that that's not important, because it certainly is, one of the things that people with disabilities bring to the table is a unique perspective, irregardless of what the job is. For example, you might be somebody working in, say, a career where you design products, or your company does. Maybe your exact role isn't designing those products, but I'm sure you probably have feedback on the design of those products and how they can improve those things to appeal to everybody instead of just people without disabilities. And they bring that to the table, as well as just being more open and understanding that even if people do have disabilities, it doesn't mean they're not good workers. I think that we have several people who are deafblind employed here at HKNC, and they're no better or no worse than any other employee. But just like everyone else, depending on any demographic you break it down as, people with disability have a perspective, sometimes a very unique one, that they can bring to the table, in addition to all the other skills that they can bring.
Absolutely. And we've experienced that as well by having a variety of people with disabilities. It requires you to pay attention a little bit more to how you are onboarding new employees, to the tools and services that you're offering to your own employees. It just brings a certain awareness and improves your processes in so many ways, not to mention the perspective that it brings to your clients. So I can definitely echo that. Now, Doug, is there anything you want to add to that? And if not, let me ask you, what are some of the gaps from the hiring perspective?
Yeah, well, to piggyback on what Scott was just saying, I mean, I'm coming at it from a slightly, different perspective, but one that's still what Scott just shared really applies, in the sense that, on a film set, where we have an actor who's deaf-blind, he's, Robert, both him personally and his participation in the collaboration and creation of the film, opened us to new ideas and ways of going about things that weren't things that we were aware of before, and things that were very much to not only the betterment of the final product of the film itself, but to the experience of making that film, which ultimately I think is something that's really important too. A lot of times we just look at the final product of things, whether it be, a film that's screening or a product a company's making, but being that we spend a lot of our lives, actually in the process of working at whatever our respective job is, it's also really meaningful when that journey and that process is enhanced. And I would say across the board, Robert's part of the collaboration in making the film added greatly to both of those, the result and the experience of getting to that result.
Thanks. So this is a question for everybody. There's a Helen Keller movie coming out. Anybody have comments on the movie and some of the controversy around it?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in there for a second.
Sure.
I think there's an interpreter switch, so I'll just hold for a second. Great. Continuing. Yeah, there was a recent announcement of a film about the life of Helen Keller. I believe it takes place when she's younger and her relationship with Anne Sullivan. There was a young deaf actress named Millicent Simmons who was cast in the lead role as Helen Keller. She is most well known from A Quiet Place. And the controversy is as such that in a current context where authentic casting has been a more notable, something that's gotten a lot more had been talked about a lot more in the film industry. This is a case where the role of Helen Keller being someone who is deafblind, is being played by someone who is not deafblind. And that is something that has certainly upset not just people in the deafblind community, but people in the disability community who believe that authentic representation of people with disabilities on screen is important. I can say personally that's something that was really important to us when we were making Feeling Through. I personally wasn't going to make Feeling Through without casting an actor who is deafblind in the deafblind role. But what I will say I think that this isn't the first case, certainly not the first case of a casting that's not authentic, if you will, as far as disability is concerned. But I think that conversation needs to evolve and mature, because right now, kind of scanning things that I'm tagged in, or just looking at things on social media, a lot of the ire is aimed towards Millicent Simmons, who's the actress who was cast in that role. A little bit, some to the producers as well. But I think what needs to, rather than, I think that frustration and that anger and other emotions needs to start to approach, needs to start to be something that's discussed of like, how do we solve this problem, or how do we better this situation long term moving forward? And really what I think needs to get a lot more focus is what is the infrastructure like that's supporting, in this case, actors who are deaf, blind, or actors with disabilities to be able to get meaningful training to be professional actors who can, already be ready to step onto a set and, have that training that they need to be able to be successful. I'm someone personally as a director who's very willing to work with quote unquote non-actors. But that's not it's not reasonable to think that every production is going to be set up for that. And though this doesn't in any way say that this current production of Helen Keller couldn't have still found a way to cast a deafblind actress. I'm certainly not saying that. But what we really need to do is start investing in creating accessible infrastructure for creatives who are disabled, and in this case, disabled actors or aspiring actors. I personally, it's something that I would love to help make happen, to have accessible acting classes for people who are deafblind. But as of right now, I don't know of any personally, and have done a fair amount of digging. And how can we expect to have a wealth of deafblind talent to choose from if we're not creating the infrastructure that gives people who are deafblind the opportunity to get that training? So I think that's something where I hope it starts to shine a light on that, and that there's more people more entities that will invest in that infrastructure to really support, people who are deafblind to have that training. And ultimately, people often don't even attempt to do something if they don't feel like there's a path for them to do it. So you might also find so many more people that are interested in exploring what it means to become an actor in that community if given the option to have that training. Robert, for instance, is someone who himself always wanted to be an actor from the time he was a young boy. Didn't see anyone like him on his TV screen, so he didn't think it was possible. Had an opportunity later in life, and now not only wants to continue that pursuit, but we've heard from a lot of other people in the community who, after seeing or knowing about Robert being on screen, now want to try their hand at acting. So it's an example of that if you create that representation and also an infrastructure to support the cultivation of artistic pursuits, there certainly will be plenty of people who will line up and want to do that. But you can't expect to snap your fingers and fix that problem without addressing why that's happening. And that's my hope, is that this will be a great opportunity to talk about how do we create systems that cultivate the ability for people to train as actors or in whatever creative pursuits they prefer.
And if I can just add something, I also think that we sometimes think, well, it's a movie, so it's a movie, it's a TV show, it's a commercial. What does that have to do with an actual day-to-day workplace? But usually media is the most powerful tool we have. We've seen it during the pandemic more than before, where it can transform, shift attitudes. It can totally cause a cultural change. And if we were to start off with things like that, using authentic actors to play their authentic selves, or to display the disability or the ability they have, then they would be able to start changing the minds of the new generation, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and create that cultural shift where we do become truly inclusive, and we don't see a disability. We just happen to see what people can do, and honor that ability instead of not. So I think even though we think of an actress, who is not deafblind playing Helen Keller, and we think, well, she's not an authentic, she doesn't really have that disability. It's an actual big issue because we are not contributing to inclusiveness, and we're not going to cause a cultural change if we don't start with media, which is the most powerful tool we have right now. And then it'll just trickle down to everyday life, business, corporations, things like that. So it's just, there's a lot that, and this could be a whole different discussion on how media can cause that cultural change, and shift minds and change mindsets. But I am a little bothered that there is no deaf-blind actress playing Helen Keller. And maybe Scott can also chime in and add a little bit about what he thinks as the deaf-blind individual.
Sure, this is Scott. So well, first of all, I agree with everything that both of you has said, really. And I think for authenticity's sake, that's exactly what should have been done. And even if it was someone who wasn't formally trained, there's some authenticity to that as well. It's not even so much, can you get the training or can we work with you? That wasn't even entertained. Now, here is one thing I will say, though. Yes, 100% true. It is not a deaf-blind actress playing the role in this situation. And yes, indeed, it should be. But at least they went with someone who is deaf. At least they went with somebody with a disability, period. Because 40 years ago, do you really think that would have happened? Would that have even been considered? My guess, I'm not 40 yet, so I obviously wasn't here at that time. My guess is no, it wouldn't have been. It would have been played by a hearing sighted person, and there would have been basically no authenticity at all. So yes, I'm disappointed that a deafblind person was not chosen for this role, and fully support the people in favor of this. On the other hand, we have made a little bit of progress in the sense that at least it's an actor with a disability who, being deaf, it's not deafblind, but it is a bit more authentic than a hearing sighted person. So could there be progress there? Well, look at what Doug put together, right? That was about as authentic as you're going to get in terms of a deafblind actor playing a deafblind role. So are we making progress? Yes. Is it slow? Absolutely. So I think we are moving somewhat in the right direction. We just have a ways to go yet. And I really hope that in any other situation, whatever the disability is, if you're blind, if the person is blind, then find a blind actor or actress. If they're deaf, then find someone who's deaf, or any other disability, really. I think that there is not only authenticity, we go back to diversity again, because, I could tell you from some of the acting I've done, some people would say I act all the time, but that's a different story. But, it's really a situation where we aren't given the opportunity. If we're never given the opportunity, how can we possibly know, or how can the world even possibly know? Yeah, you can't do that. Well, how do you know? Have I been given the chance? If the answer is no, then you can't possibly know.
Yeah, that's all a great point, and something that kind of came up in a previous webinar with Christopher Patno at Google is, like we were talking about Clubhouse, which is a hearing-only platform, and they got a lot of criticism because they were inaccessible. And I asked this controversial question: if you have an audio-only platform, or the way I put it was, should radio exist, right? Because radio cannot be something that works for people who are deaf, right?
No.
So should it exist? But on the other hand, it's really good if you're blind, you prefer to have an audio only medium. And what really kind of came out of all of that was, as long as it's done with intention, then that's what we're really looking for. And so I think the fact that they hired a deaf actress really shows that there was intention there. But Doug really pointed out that there's a lack of infrastructure, or almost like the supply chain of accessibility is something that we really need to improve. So Leila, this is, how do you pronounce it? Endium, or I know you had, it sounded good when you said it.
It's pronounced Nadiam.
Nadiam. How has the NADIM month been for you, and anything to add that we haven't already covered on the supply chain of accessibility?
Well, the DM has been a great month. We celebrated, HKNC also had a webinar regarding just the advancements that we've had. And it's great to see how we have so many deafblind individuals in the state of California who are employed, are working. Of course, it's not an easy task. There's a lot of accessibility issues that need to be handled. However, we really appreciate companies that go above and beyond to show that desire to support, to be truly inclusive, because it's not just about diversity, but we need to truly start being inclusive. And when you aim for inclusion, then you look for ways, innovative ways to create your platform accessible, even if it's just, the portal that employees use to access their ADP, for example. It could be as simple as making that platform, making sure it's accessible, and also making sure that you have the right lighting, for example, that you have the system set up where if the person does need an interpreter, they can request one easily. So this month has been a really great month for that. We've been able to partner with a few other companies. Amazon was one of them. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it today. But Amazon has been a great supporter of NADIM and a great supporter of deafblind employees as well. So we have been very thrilled to see the progress, and also not only that they're employed, but they're making careers out of their employment, and both parties benefit. The employers are thrilled with the talent, and the employees feel included. They have a welcoming environment that they feel safe in and loyal to. So it's been a great month. And so this month we really truly celebrate all individuals that are employed in companies that have gone above and beyond to support that cause.
Yeah, I will echo Amazon. They took Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and then internally they do Global Accessibility Awareness Month, where they do a full month on accessibility. So they absolutely are committed, which is great to see. Doug, I want to make sure before, as we start to run out of time, I want to make sure that we all find out where can we see your film. But I'd also like to ask you, how did you get into filmmaking, and particularly around the topic of disability?
Yeah, sure. Well, just real quick, the film is really easy to find. If you go to feelingthrough.com, you can find the film there. You can also find the companion documentary called Connecting the Dots, which is a short doc that talks more about the origin of the film and has cameras in the room as we are trying to make it. So I think people will find that to be a great addition to watching the film. We also have an audio described version on feelingthrough.com as well for those who want to access that, as well as a transcript available. And the film also has captions for people who would like to access that. So there are a number of ways to access the film. As far as just real quick, I got into film I took classes in college because I thought I loved watching films, had an interest in making them, had never really tried, but thought it was like amazing that I could get college credit for taking film classes. I thought I was like, cheating the system somehow. I'm like, I want to do this and I'm getting college credit for it. Great. And, slowly but surely just figured out the stories that I wanted to tell. And again, for those who watch the documentary, they'll get the longer version of this, but the short version is 10 years ago, I was coming home late one night and I encountered a man holding a sign that said that he was deaf and blind and needed help crossing the street. And the sign noted to tap him, which I did. And that turned into a part of an evening together where we communicated by me tracing one letter at a time on his palm, him writing back in a notepad. And it was just on many levels, a very memorable and amazing experience. And Artemio, who is the man I met in real life, was just such a fascinating and warm-hearted person who I felt like I really made a connection with. So the film, though fictionalized, was very much inspired by that encounter. And again, was something that was so amazing to be made in collaboration with HKNC and the deafblind community. And for me, now 3+ years into this process of from making it to exhibiting it, it's been an amazing opportunity for me to not only learn so much about a community that I'd known very little about before, but build lasting relationships with some people in the community and have it be a really fruitful and active part of my day-to-day life. So it's been a real honor to do it, and has opened my awareness to so many other amazing topics within that. And why I'm sitting on this panel with you today and having thoughts about the issues that we're talking about that if you go back 3 years, I wouldn't have known anything about. So it's been a gift that keeps on giving in that way.
Wow, only 3 years. That's cool. And a cool story. Sorry, go ahead. Wait, before you say something, Leila, folks, continue to just ask some more questions because we're going to the questions now. So, all right, go ahead, Leila.
I just wanted to add to that for deafblind acting, I thought about it. There's, if anyone's interested too, they have deafblind theater, PTT. So also look that up. And if you need the links, you can email Joe, we can send it out. But they have a cruise coming up, I believe, pretty soon. And I've heard it's a very wonderful experience. It's composed of deafblind actors who perform in this theater, and they're trying to make it widely accessible for everybody. So that's another support that you can do too. If anyone's interested, supporting authentic deafblind actors, that would be a good start as well.
Great. All right, let's go to some audience questions here. Deepak, I don't want to say your last name because I don't want to mispronounce it. How does one maintain a balance between having authenticity represented on screen versus encouraging more people to write direct scripts for authentic people? Given the maturity curve in the industry, won't we shoo them away so soon?
I'll hop in to just give a thought on that. I mean, I think there's a couple things going on. There's also, how we work to create systems that have more people with disabilities getting support to tell their own stories, which kind of, if you want to talk about authenticity, starting from the actual writing and creation is really important. I think as far as scaring people away and not maybe biting off more than one can chew, so to speak, quotation marks. Look, I mean, the reality of the situation is we're behind on this. We're kind of overdue. This isn't something where it's this is something where we're needing to play catch up and fast. There needs to be really, really significant improvement in a really short period of time for us to have any modicum of success here, because we're way behind. We're talking about, we had, what is it, ADA 31 this year. It's been 31 years since the Americans with Disabilities Act. The intention of something like that was to create a lot more parity in fields like this. And we've made very, very little progress in this space since then. Very fortunately, there's been a lot more progress over the last couple of years, which has really come from conversation and awareness, and a lot of people within the disability community having bit larger platforms to really educate a lot of other people around these topics. But anyone who's feels like it's in too much too fast, I think needs to kind of reconsider what it is they're doing, because the reality of the situation is we're behind and we really got to catch up quick.
Thanks, Doug. Where's the deaf-blind theater located?
So this is Leila speaking. So I can send that information if anyone wants to get more information on that. I can definitely share that. Maybe Joe can arrange for my email, either my email to be sent to
Angela Ortega asked the question, so.
And I will make sure to send that over. They also, I know that they have their website running, but if you put it in on Protactile Theater, it will populate their website, and you'll be able to get information on their upcoming cruise that they're doing. And there's also, if you're interested, there's organizations such as, I'm gonna give a quick shout out to an organization called Council de Manos. And their director of inclusion, Roberto Cabrera, he is deafblind himself, and he organizes workshops, webinars that are to gather more information on how to truly be inclusive, how to create a safe space for individuals who are deafblind. So that's another resource out there. And I see that somebody put, what are the best practices for employers to write policies? And I want to just answer that real quickly, just because I saw that. And the best practice is to reach out to organizations that are experts in the field. So for example, collaboration with organizations like HKNC, or disability resource centers. Those are the best organizations to go to if you're writing policies. And even last week, I listened to a webinar of Milt Wright and Associates, and I can also share that resource. They have been in the industry for years and years and years, and they have so much knowledge. So using people like that would include these people in your think tank so that they could help you develop the right policies, so that from the beginning, you create policies that are inclusive for everyone and you don't overlook any marginalized community.
Funny that you mentioned Milt Wright, because Milt Wright has a question here. Please name the film again. I might as well give the URL.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I was feeling through. Feelingthrough.com is the website.
Great, thank you. Vicky Dupay, I'm not sure I pronounced your last name, even though I know you. Vicky Dupay. Sorry. Yes, Amazon just signed up for Ability Job Fair and posting jobs on abilityjobs.com. Ability E is a terrific place for in front of the camera and behind the camera jobs for people with disability. And I apologize, Vicky, for messing up your last name. Dave Bryant asks, Doug, what was the process of directing a deafblind actor?
Yeah, to quickly answer that, in partnering with Helen Keller National Center, one of the great things about that collaboration was to, first and foremost, for me to educate myself about the community. And that meant connecting with a lot of people from the community, people who worked with the community. So I went to the National Center based in Long Island a number of times to meet a lot of the students there, a lot of the staff, get to know a lot about the community. I live in Los Angeles, so I connected with a lot of the local community here. And that was a huge first step. From there, we had a great communication team of interpreters who facilitated the communication between Robert and myself throughout the process. And to be quite honest, I was like, really became an afterthought very quickly, being that we just had a great flow of communication between us. Robert's also just an amazing person with a great attitude, so it was very easy to work with him in that sense. And also just got to, I got a chance to know Robert's accessibility needs ahead of time, as did the whole team, so that we knew we could make the set as accessible as possible, as one can when you're shooting outside at night in the winter on New York City street corners, which is not terribly accessible for anyone when it's getting very cold in that way, but we certainly did our best with everyone, Robert included. And yeah, it really, to be honest, it was really not very complicated. I mean, obviously you need the right people to make sure that everything's running smoothly, but it really was not very complicated. I would say there were many other things that were way more challenging than it, including the cold weather, which I would rank certainly way ahead of that. So it was something that was really additive to the experience and really not a significant challenge. There's lots of challenges on a film set, and it didn't rank very high compared to a lot of other ones, to put it lightly.
Thank you. Aaron Wahid asks, how can deafblind people find out about job opportunities as an actor or any position related to film industry for the future?
Well, that's a great question. I'd say first and foremost, if you're interested in becoming an actor, there's a couple things you want to do. Again, like acting classes are really important. I'm hoping that there are more acting classes that are made that accessible to people who are deafblind. But also there are some getting representation. There are some fortunately some new actually a new management company that represents solely actors with disabilities. There is an agent who's been working at KMR for a long time who represents actors with disabilities. So contacting those reps that particularly focus on working with actors with disabilities would be a good start. Whether you end up working with them or just to get advice of where to go, I'm sure they would have some really great advice of how to put your name in the hat for future roles.
Thanks. One last question, and then I'll get the final thought. So why don't you just go right in from the answer to final thoughts. So how do you make theater and movies accessible to deafblind people when they go to see it in person?
Well, again, Wendy, Layla, do you want to hop in there?
Well, that is actually I would feel more comfortable if somebody like Scott would add how he feels that it would be more accessible, because it is a very unique experience. What might be accessible for one deafblind individual might not be accessible for another. So we also have to take in consideration that not one service fits all type of thing, you know. Some individuals are comfortable with touch, other individuals are not comfortable with touch. And I think this is something that Scott had mentioned earlier as well. So if you want to give your thoughts, Scott, and then I can add something after.
Sure, thanks. This is Scott. So like was already said, what works for one person might not work for another. And there are a lot of efforts underway with apps and trying to, for example, if you're hard of hearing, synchronize the audio on the screen with not only the description of what's going on, but you can also hear the audio on your phone. And then, obviously you're going to want to use something so that everybody around you doesn't have to hear it. But obviously that's not going to work for someone who has no hearing at all, right? Audio is great if you can hear it, but just like video, that's not really good for me as someone with no sight. So, and one of our challenges that I'm seeing is we have captioning, which is great. If you're a Braille user, you have to be really fast to keep up with it. And of course, audio description is great for when you have the hearing for it. But one of the things that we need to work on and figure out a solution for is if someone is totally deafblind, they may be able to read the captioning, but they can't see what's going on the screen. And sometimes it's very irrelevant, contextually, what's going on screen be communicated to the person reading the captions. A deaf person would be able to see what's going on so they can, match that up with the dialogue. The blind person can hear the audio and can match that up with the description and the dialogue. But as a deafblind person, you have to have both. And because you have to have both, that means basically doing an entirely different captioning system where not only are you using the names of the people talking, which you don't normally get in captioning now. There are visual ways to represent it, of course, different colors and those sort of things. But the description itself, as far as I know, there's no way to mirror both the audio description and captioning at the same time. So it's a big challenge, and a lot of things will need to change for it to be fully accessible.
And just to piggyback on what Scott just really beautifully articulated, when we did our accessible screenings of Feeling Through, we called the Feeling Through experience because it included feeling through this companion documentary, Connecting the Dots, and the panel and Q&A with the deafblind community. We employed a lot of what Scott said. We had large open captions with a black backdrop on the screen. We had audio description available. But then we had a number of different interpreters that we provide. We get people's accessibility requests ahead of time to know specifically what they needed. So some people had the entire experience tactually signed to them. Some had close vision interpreters. Some had stage interpreters that they were relying on. What we found is it was helpful to get information, to get more information ahead of time from what people's specific accessibility needs were. As both Layla and Scott said, it's not a one size fits all. As you know, there's quite a spectrum to it. Some people wanted to have the full transcript ahead of time to familiarize with themselves before they had it actually signed to them, which we would provide if that was the request. So there's a lot of different specific requests, but something that I learned along the way that Scott, you just really insightfully pointed out is, especially with a film like Feeling Through, where there's very little dialogue, it's almost all visual, and you need that visual information. I initially created a transcript that was the combination of the audio description and the captions, but even that didn't fully suffice, because when you're creating audio description, it needs to be fairly curt because you're inserting it in, you know, to a certain pace of how the film plays out, and sometimes you're leaving out key details that, if that was your only information on the film, need to be in there. So I went back and added more detail to that transcript if that's something that someone's solely relying on, that reads a little bit more like a narrative, if you will, that has more information in it. And that's something that we learned along the process and in communicating with a lot of people who are accessing the film in a different way. So the last point I'm trying to make, to, you know, reiterate what Scott and Layla are saying, is you also need to be open to receiving feedback to how to do things better, because there's always going to be an evolution on how to better do things, and getting feedback from people and really listening to what people have to say allows you to address that in a specific and meaningful way.
You know, Doug, from your comments, it's very clear that you put a lot of love into the film that you made. And this really differentiates a great film from just a regular film. And sometimes the commercial films also, there's a lot of detail put into it, but it can't have the same love as an independently produced film. So kudos to you to really paying attention to all of those details. I could listen for another hour to all of you speak, but unfortunately I got through about half the questions and more than the full time. So at this point, I'm just going to have to say thank you to Doug and Scott as panelists. And Layla, please stay on, and I'm going to pass it on to you for the final part of our webinar. So again, thanks, Scott, Doug, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. I just quickly wanted, in honor of NADIAM, again, we talked about how important NADIAM is, especially to the community of deafblind individuals. And as a placement specialist, I see how difficult it still is for individuals who are deafblind, how difficult it is for them to get employment. Starting just from the beginning process of the intake process of hiring, all the way up to later on being hired and being able to make it a very inclusive environment has been a struggle. So NADIAM is very special because we do get to honor those who make our jobs easier and who truly make their environments a welcoming place for individuals. And last year, Joe, you were able to partner with us, and you were able to take on a deafblind individual, not only to work with you in the organization in your company, but also he was mentored a lot. Making sure that you receive that feedback from a deafblind individual, that perspective on accessibility was so invaluable. And not only that, but it made this individual really grow as a person. And I have to tell you that now he's working for T-Mobile Accessibility. And a lot of that has to do with the supports that he received at Diamond, building the confidence and giving him the skills that would really pilot and give him that go for it type of spirit. So because of that, and in the honor of NADIAM, we really wanted to honor you, and we made an award. Unfortunately, you were supposed to be in New York and they were supposed to give you the award in person, but because of unforeseen occurrences, it just didn't happen. COVID has really kind of created so many obstacles and barriers for everybody, but we really wanted to present you with an award, Joe. But it's going to be presented anyways. I'm going to make sure to give the award to either Natasha or to you in person, and we'll get great pictures. But the award itself says it's presented to Joe Devon and friends at Diamond, NADIEM 2021, for your commitment to deafblind employment accessibility. And so we really wanted to thank you so much for partnering with us, for hosting things like this webinar that show that you're on the forefront of accessibility, and all companies should strive to do that, but we start somewhere. And I hope that your example inspires others, not only in the IT fields, because I know you specialize in IT, not only in that, but in other areas as well, because your company has gone, your company is one of the ones that have gone above and beyond to support individuals who are deafblind. And at HKC, we really thank you for that.
Thank you. I hope I did that correctly, or both hands. I'm really honored. Thank you so much. But honestly, for us, that experience is so much. It brings us so much more, and I definitely want to do more of that and to work a lot more with you. One of my favorite webinars was the one that we did with Helen Keller in the past, and it's really a pleasure working with you and with your team. And thank you so much for this honor. I'm really speechless, to tell you the truth.
Definitely, it's kind of hard to give an award over Zoom. I know it's somewhat awkward, so I'm going to make sure to somehow get a good photo op of you with the award.
That sounds great.
We can share it later on social media. But definitely, I encourage everybody, to open up to kind of just open up their minds. It doesn't take much to create an accessible space. It really doesn't. Sometimes it could be as simple as just, a magnifier. It could be as simple as just getting additional lighting. It could be just getting a special program for zooming your text. It doesn't require too much, but it does require the want to, the desire. And that comes from here and here, Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go, but I'm very hopeful. And so far, NADIEM has been a great month for the deafblind community, and we look forward to next year, because every year it just has to get better. And with webinars like this, we create even just a tiny inch of more awareness, but that's how we're going to make it happen, just little by little. So again, we just thank you so much at Diamond, your whole team, Natasha, Rob, everyone has been great. And you, Joe, of course, you're very special and dear to us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And sorry, I'm just reading the chat to see if there's anything else, but there's just too much to add here. So I apologize to everyone that I could not get to, and thank you again. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Leila and Helen Keller group. It's really a pleasure to work with all of you, and hopefully we'll do this webinar again very soon.
Definitely. And I just wanted to just add one last thing also. HKNC would love to host you next year when you come. We still want you to take a look at our new technology center.
I'd love to.
So hopefully next year, when things get settled a little bit, we're more than happy to welcome you.
Yeah, let's hope that next year is the year we thought 2022 would be.
Exactly.
All right. Or wait, no, 2021. Sorry, I'm confusing the years. I'm already there.
Forward thinking always, right?
Yep. All right.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Take care.